The Grimgar anime goes through Mary's tragic backstory, followed by her integration into the squad. However, have you ever wondered what happened between those two events? As you know, Mary's original party had an encounter with death spots, which resulted in 3 out of the 5 of them dying, and Mary only surviving due to Hayashi physically dragging her out of the mine. It's this same comrade that pulls Mary out of her tear-soaked bed, telling her that he managed to find them a new party by joining Orion. She reluctantly accepts, all the while deep down still wishing that she died that day instead of her friends. They join up with a party led by Tanamori, and they begin hunting lowly goblins in order to get back into the groove of things. During the following days, Hayashi's mental state significantly improves, but Mary, on the other hand, seems to be worse than ever as she physically shakes from anxiety as she watches Hayashi charge into battle. Mary then decides to quit Orion and moves into the all-women dorm that we see in the anime, where she spends days on end just locked inside. Eventually she heads into town in search of work and ends up bumping into a kind gentleman at the Red Moon office. Maron invites her to join his party on a 3-day hunting expedition into the Quickwind Plains, and in an attempt to move forward, Mary forces herself to accept. The journey to the spot is uneventful, but upon arrival, she is met with a valley littered with zombies. Of course, this provokes her PTSD as she listens to the party savagely pummel a zombie into the ground. Then it's later that evening while sitting around the bonfire that the party collectively decides to be nice and give Mary the single tent all to herself. She accepts and goes to lay down when it finally hits her. She is many miles away from civilization, surrounded by 4 strange men who she knows little to nothing about. She begins beating herself up for making such a huge blunder, but after a while ends up falling asleep due to the stress and exhaustion. Though she wakes up in the middle of the night, just as the door of her tent swishes closed. She carefully listens as Maron and the ex-paladin Jin discuss their previous and numerous non-consensual female partners. With her fears now realized, she gets up and casually walks out of the tent, purposely avoiding eye contact. Mary plants a kick square on piece of shit number 2's face, followed by a roundhouse kick into piece of shit number 1's side. She then sprints away into the night, completely alone, and just hoping not to become a wild beast's next meal. Of course, Mary makes it back to Alterna safely, and winds up becoming a sort of freelance healer who spends her evenings at Sherry's Tavern. It's during one of these evenings that she's greeted by an eccentric man named Kikawa, who for some reason she's unable to run off. Over the next few weeks, she continues taking jobs as a way to feed herself, and at one point Mary even joined a massive search party looking for the famous Leslie camp. The entire journey lasted about 5 days, and during which the leader ended up confessing his feelings for Mary. She bluntly turns him down without missing a beat, causing piece of shit number 3 to try and fail to force his way into her bed that night. Then back at Alterna, piece of shit number 3 even had the audacity to argue with and belittle Mary, though Kikawa saw this and came to lend her some emotional support. Now, due to her freelance work, she earned a lot of not-so-nice nicknames, primarily due to her good looks and harsh personality. At this point, Mary's only real friends would be Shinohara, Hayashi, and Kikawa, who has actually brought her some business this evening. He promptly introduces 3 very unreliable-looking boys, and Mary immediately regrets her decision to take on this job. They proceed to head to Damaro as a party, and Mary is straight up scared for her life, as this is by far the weakest and worst party that she's ever laid eyes on. Luckily, they manage to survive that day, and we find Mary relaxing in the bath as she contemplates whether or not she will continue hunting with the squad. Anyways, if you're new to the channel, then I promise you're going to want to start watching this series. And to everyone else, come back next week for more Grimgar in Wonderland. And lastly, shout out to all my beautiful patrons.